Welcome to the future of blockchain. It's 3 letters, and it's not ETH. It's EOS. This panel is comprised of 5 of the people that I consider to be, including myself, to be some of the people who are leading the charge with this new blockchain. And I'm going to quickly introduce the panel and tell them why I picked these people to represent EOS and to tell you about what's coming down the pike in the next 6 months. First of all, we have Ben Sigmund. Ben is with the EOS Alliance. This is sort of the pan-governing body of EOS, and Ben is working with all of the major EOS apps and wallets, including mine, EOS Links, eoslinks.com. Go download it today. Second, we have Sam Caspian from Everpedia, and Sam has raised $30 million for really the first large-scale EOS app, which is a Wikipedia killer based on EOS. Next, we have John Linden. John Linden, has anybody here played Call of Duty? Raise your hands. Well, Call of Duty was Mr. Linden's one of Mr. Linden's, contributions to mankind.
There you go.
So him and his team have some amazing credits, sure. And they're building on EOS as well. So it's very interesting. And finally, we have Amy Wan. Has anybody heard of DocuSign? Any DocuSign users? Well, throw out DocuSign. The future is BlockUSign on EOS. BlockUSign is a product that Amy and her company SageWise have developed, and it's basically DocuSign on the blockchain. And it's one of the killer apps for blockchain, one of the first productivity apps that's coming out on EOS. And so I'm going to start the panel. I'm going to ask Ben, is EOS ready for prime time? Are we really ready for a prime time blockchain solution?
Yeah, I think that we're getting closer every day. I think it's an iterative process and that we're getting a lot closer. This is the closest we've ever been, and tomorrow will be even closer. So we're solving a lot of technical issues, we're solving a lot of usability issues, and things are really improving at a fast pace in this project.
Okay, I'm going to skip to John.
Okay.
You've been obviously looking at this from a hardcore game developer's background.
Right.
Now, when you approach the blockchain, what did you think? What were some of the issues?
Yeah, I think the first thing we look at is gaming first, blockchain second, which could be different than a lot of people here. So blockchain is really kind of our second focus and gaming number 1. So looking at it from that perspective, we looked at a lot of different chains and we really wanted to find things that could actually perform, on big full 3D games. And honestly, I think EOS has some great pieces, and I don't know if you want to go through them now or later, but there's some amazing pieces they're bringing to the table, from being able to have control transaction costs so you can make those transparent to users. I think that's absolutely critical to for adoption, to the way they're doing some of the sidechain tech. There's just some amazing pieces to really have kind of a game that can sustain and be played by a general gamer rather than a blockchain enthusiast.
Cool. Yeah. And let's skip to Amy, and we'll talk a little bit about, Amy, you're a securities lawyer by training, and we won't hold that against you. But EOS has some really interesting features in it that other blockchains have not really adopted. In particular, their notion of these Ricardian smart contracts and other things. And obviously, Ben, you are obviously intimately aware of this through the EOS Alliance. So Amy, can you talk a little bit about that, and then Ben talk a little bit more about some of the governance issues and framework?
Yeah, so the EOS ecosystem, the base protocol is very interesting because it's a very ambitious mission. They are trying to be the first governed blockchain, right? And governance is a very important thing because today, basically every time I go and talk in front of a crypto panel, I ask people, raise your hand if you're cool with randomly losing money. And of course, no one raises their hand. And yet that is what all the other blockchains, that's how they all work today, right? You just randomly lose money. And so built into the core of the EOS protocol is what we call governance, and part of that governance is dispute resolution, smart contracts, Ricardian contracts, and the difference between a regular smart contract and a Ricardian contract is that really it's a smart contract plus a traditional written contract, and the reason why that's so important is because I could get into this technical discussion for hours, right? But at the end of the day, what is most important in all of these transactions, in any transaction on blockchain or not, is the fact that you want to get what you are bargaining for, what you think you're going to enter the transaction for. And right now, in the larger blockchain ecosystem, it's not the case.
Right. Sam, so you made the plunge pretty early on. You were one of really the first people, before even the EOS mainnet launched, you sort of said, we're doing EOS.
Yeah, August 2017.
Okay, so how have things moved since August 2017?
Fantastic. I mean, every month since the mainnet launch back in June, it's been extremely, extremely exciting. There's been so many things going on that you can hardly really keep up, even though we're really in the thick of things. And just to go back on, is EOS ready for prime time? One of the most important things I want to say is it's really the only platform right now that you can actually build real decentralized applications. And what I mean by that is if you look at the promise of Bitcoin, what it actually has done, what its promises are, there's no company behind it, there's no CEO, everything is uncensorable and peer-to-peer. The real thing with that is if you want to build those kinds of applications, which all of the logic is on the blockchain. So for Everpedia, which is the decentralized version of Wikipedia, we've built editing of the articles, voting of the articles, earning the tokens. All of that logic is actually on-chain itself and completely decentralized. The web interface, the website on everpedia.org is actually just a way to view that data and sign transactions. So those real decentralized applications right now are only available and able to be made on EOS. When you look at Ethereum applications, the only thing you can really do is issue your own ERC20 token and create an application that's a classical application that just works with these tokens, which is cool, and it shows what's to come, but it's not actually that exciting. With Everpedia, we've built every piece of it, truly every part of the logic, completely on-chain, and that's what is really cool about EOS, because you can actually do that for the first time.
Cool. Now, going back to Amy's point, one of the things is who likes losing money randomly? Nobody, right? So I want to have Ben talk about a little story that actually Ben was involved in recouping, I think it was $2 million or $20 million?
$12 million.
$12 million.
Yeah.
So Ben actually was able to save $12 million, roughly, with some help. So
yeah,
how did that, tell us that
true.
story.
So the basic story is that with EOS, when you have EOS, you stake your EOS to vote in governance to vote for your block producers who are the miners. And I was at dinner with some other block producers, and we noticed that we each lost a ton of votes. And we went to investigate, well, what happened? We saw that someone had their keys changed, and then they unstaked, which is a really incredibly uncommon thing to happen within a minute of one another. People are not going to change their keys and then do an action that puts at risk $12 million. When your EOS is staked, it takes 3 days to unstake it. So there's a period where you have time to notice that something happened to your account. If you chose not to do it, you can then take action against it. So in this situation, we were able to find the guy because he also noticed that his account keys got changed. Like he didn't take that action himself. And so he was reaching out, trying to figure out how he could help, and we were able to connect the dots and blacklist his account to prevent the hackers from actually taking the money out of his account. So now his account is just frozen with the funds in it until we can figure out what actions to take from there. But just the idea that, like, wow, we can actually pause this and say, let's take time to figure out what happened, gather the evidence, and make a decision instead of the funds being gone in an instant. I don't know any other chain that
There are no other chains right now.
Yeah,
so talking about other chains, what kind of, we sort of made, the answer to the question is really there are no other chains, but like what, the question is really what, if you're developing on something right now in the next 6 months, what things would you really consider, and what things are maybe coming 9 months from now, 12 months from now? John, you look at a lot of chains. What do you think?
In terms of what's coming with other chains or what's coming?
What's coming with other chains that would
Yeah.
be competitive, that you could conceive of really being the killer platform for like building the next Call of Duty?
Yeah, so again, I think there's a couple things. Yeah, obviously, we love chains that support assets, and that's actually one thing we should talk about on EOS.
Yeah.
It's not the format's not quite there yet, but you can actually still work around it. But I think a lot of the chains we're starting to see out there's some fantastic pieces, but I think there's nobody that's quite ready for the mainnet. You know, we hear a lot of people, oh, our mainnet's going to be next month, and then you don't hear about it again. But honestly, I think for us, the really interesting piece is I mean, there's some things like Thunder, and there's things like Cosmos, and there's some other ones out there, but there's just nobody that I've seen yet that I'd kind of wager, at least in the next 9 months, on putting a game out there. I think that's this place we're in right now, is that EOS does have that. They're the closest, I think, for production, right? And I think that's what's exciting. I think there'll be some other people to kind of challenge them down the road.
Yeah.
But I still think we're at least 9 to 12 months off before we see another one really kind of hit to the level of stability.
I want to talk a little bit about games, because I think I don't think it's going to end with games, but I do think games are really potentially one of the initial absolute killer apps of EOS, right? And has anybody here played EOS Bets? Satoshi Dice? Anybody played a little bit? So, Ben, you've been involved in some of these things.
Yeah,
You've seen you bought, I think, Asia the other day.
Right, yeah.
So tell us about that.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that the numbers on these games is astronomical. It's wild what people are spending on these games.
Give us an order of magnitude.
I think it's like the top game in the past 7 days is doing like $200 million gross volume.
$200 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is not CryptoKitties anymore. We're talking several orders of magnitude more.
Yeah, and there's questions about how much of that could be fake, and I think at the most it's 20 to 30%. Okay. At the most, it's very high.
So talk about this experience.
Oh, yeah,
this
so,
one random game that shows up,
well,
and you are inclined to bet $2,000 of your own money personally on it.
Yeah, so one of my friends sent me this game, and he was like, "This game is terrible. What a terrible idea."
Okay.
And I was like, "Well, actually, let's take a look at this game. It is a pretty terrible idea. You have to buy different continents or different countries in the world." And so I told another friend about it, and he bought some, and I was like, "You're stupid. You shouldn't do that."
Of course.
But then I went and bought the ones he bought from him because I felt responsible. You
Right.
know? And then I also bought Asia too because I was like, "Oh, Asia's a pretty good deal actually," because I got into the game.
Right.
And
You paid real money for it.
I paid real money. I paid about $2,000, and then
That's stupid, right?
it was pretty stupid. Yeah.
Okay. So
But-
you were able to flip it.
The only way you make money on this is if someone else buys it from you. So you have to basically believe that someone's going to buy this thing from you.
Greater fool theory.
Greater fool, yeah. Which someone did. So by the time I woke up in the morning, I was at $3,000. So I made $1,000.
And it's gone up since then.
It's gone up. It's at 3,500 or something.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
so that's an example of a pretty interesting kind of thing with games. So, but now to get to the next generation of games, I think there's still something, as John said, there's still a few things missing. One of these things is, I think, what they call non-fungible tokens. Let's talk a little bit about NFTs, as they're called. And John, I mean, they're obviously kind of important for you as a game developer.
Yeah, definitely. I think NFTs are really, really fascinating. And honestly, I think in the short term, my bet is that anybody that doesn't, in the next year here doesn't formally support that in some way, will start falling behind. I just think it's going to drive a lot of that usage. It's one thing we're looking at from a games perspective is honestly, and again, it might be taboo to say, but we're actually focused more on the assets on chain and writing to the chain for assets than currency even. And I think that's really important for where we're heading, and I think the industry goes, is that cryptocurrency is tough. The onboarding we'll talk about, I'm sure, but the onboarding is hard to do, and I don't think you're going to move millions of people into the space if you have to focus completely on having the users spending cryptocurrency. However, I think if you focus on the assets and you focus on these NFTs, these non-fungible tokens, that can all be done behind the scenes, right? And I think that's the important part to move this industry forward, is to have consumers that are suddenly getting a race car in a game that's actually written to a chain, right? They might not know that. They might not know that that's on a chain, and what does that mean, and where's my private key? It's just the concept of, they have a car, and somebody says, hey, I'll buy that car from you. And you're like, what are you talking about? And well, you can sell me that car in or out of the game. Those are powerful concepts that I think move the industry forward. And so for us, that's what we're really excited about these NFTs, because we can start doing things like that in games, whether it's team structures or it's assets in a game or just kind of whatever that is. It's going to be a very familiar concept to gamers that'll automatically introduce them into blockchain kind of when they're ready. Does that make sense?
And I think also this is like from a wallet. So we make a wallet again called EOS Links. And I think one of the great ideas is that this wallet doesn't just contain your top 100 cryptocurrencies, right? This wallet may contain a sword, okay?
Yep.
This wallet may contain a player on the Dodgers, right?
Yep.
Like, I have an 11-year-old, and I can tell you that, you know, if there was something like this for Fortnite, I mean, I'd be broke, right? Because all I would be doing would be buying Fortnite skins. I mean,
Yep.
that's it. That's so, you know, and having those things in your wallet is such a cool thing that I think the minute we start moving a little bit, that thing could be deployed pretty much today on massive scale, right? So the Dodgers did this Ethereum, you know, kind of Dodger giveaway. You went to the Dodger game, 40,000 people gave out these little Dodger tokens. I think they're going for like $100 now, right?
Well, yeah, because no one knew how to use them.
Nobody knows how to use them. But imagine that these things are actually useful, right? And there's like a Dodgers game. I mean, you know, it's again, my 11-year-old is a rabid Dodger fan, you know, so like he'll collect the whole team, you know what I mean? Like, and so I can definitely see mass appeal in these NFTs, and so we need to get to a standard. How close are we to that?
I think there's a couple of them out there right now. I think you're going to see some of the bigger players kind of come together to create one, and so we're quite excited by that. And I think it's going to, you know, it'll evolve a little bit. I think we're to the point that we can actually support, you know, full 3D objects, you know, and I think that's when it starts getting fun, for us at least, is when you can actually have real objects, real game objects that you can take, you can customize, you can resell, you can make money. I mean, there's all sorts of cool opportunities that come out of these NFTs once we get them fully supported.
So I want to talk about obstacles to adoption. I think one of the things that was sort of mentioned a little bit, and I know Sam's going to dive into this, and I'd like Amy to dive in a little bit, which is, how do you get your EOS, right? Because I've got, you know, close to 12,000 people have created new accounts on my wallet, and about 25,000 downloads, all in the last 60 days. And you know, these guys are all sitting there. They're like, "This is cool, Fred. Great. I love links. What the hell is EOS, and where do I get it?" Okay, so question: How do you see that evolving, right? Because Coinbase doesn't even support EOS, right?
Yeah.
How do you see that evolving? And then follow-on question: Anybody wants to take it? Where do you see stablecoins going?
Yeah, well, one of the main things about adoption is with Everpedia, we're always getting people saying, I really want to use it, I really want to edit articles, how do I get EOS, how do I get IQ tokens, which are the tokens of the Everpedia network. Adoption needs to come, it's not there yet. If you just want to get into the ecosystem, just think about how difficult it is right now. You have to sign up for Coinbase. You have to connect a bank account. You have to buy Ethereum, so pay a fee, right, between the conversion.
Then take a photo with a little sticky note.
Yeah, you first get verified, right?
A little sticky note in the
exactly,
photo,
and then pay the fee, buy Ethereum, send it to an exchange with EOS, buy EOS, then convert it to IQ if you want to use Everpedia, keep some EOS because you need some RAM and CPU or something, right? And then send it to your Lynx wallet, and then finally actually use the application.
Amazingly, people are actually going through all those steps.
Yeah, amazingly,
right?
we've got thousands of people doing it, but it's
the goal of actually being able to send, once you've done all those 7 steps, you can send EOS or you can play these games super fast, and it's super addicting. But you have 7 steps to go through. So how do we cut through that? Let's talk about stablecoins. Ben, talk to me about stablecoins on EOS.
The existing stablecoin ecosystem is basically that there's a lot of coins that are cryptocurrencies that are backed by fiat money.
Yeah.
But you can't buy them with dollars, and you can't cash out to dollars.
Right.
Right. So
why not?
Yeah. Why not?
Amy, you're a lawyer. Why can't we just take money, take a stand, and say I'm selling you right now?
Let's not talk about legal on this panel.
Okay.
Yeah, well, whatever. There's obviously legal and regulatory
There's legal and
challenges.
regulatory issues,
and,
right?
And banks, I think, are also kind of hesitant because they're like, what is this thing?
Right.
How does it
so
work?
stablecoins are coming, though.
Stablecoins are coming. I think a big deal is having stablecoins on EOS because EOS has no transaction fees.
Yeah.
So
Right. So now you get best of both worlds. You take your money, you go buy the stablecoin,
yeah,
you link it to your bank account. So now I can go buy a stablecoin, and I will confidently say that within 30 days from today, every single person in this audience will be able to go buy an EOS stablecoin, 100% with 100% conviction, because I know of several projects that are all unannounced. But I'm saying it's going to happen within 30 days. You will be able to take your dollars, buy a stablecoin, use the stablecoin in links to send to somebody, and then that person will be able to take the stablecoin and redeem it for US dollars directly from linking
Yeah, I
to their
think
bank
the
account.
idea that people want to pay for things with very volatile assets is insane.
It's kind of crazy, right?
Right, like people who say that people are going to pay with Bitcoin for their rent and Starbucks and all these things. Well, just not going to happen.
Yeah.
No, because I mean, I was at the concession stand and one of the persons said, "Do you accept Bitcoin?"
Really?
And the answer was no, right? And I think one of the problems is the person selling the coffee had no idea what the price of Bitcoin is.
They'd have
right?
to wait 8 to 15 minutes for the
Right.
transaction to
So it doesn't
finalize.
work, right?
Yeah.
So you need a fast transaction, and you actually need the thing to be priced in the currency of the land, right? U.S. dollars, right?
Yeah.
So basically, I think that's one of the first, the most interesting things that's going to happen in that. Let's talk a little bit about now. We got all these fungible tokens, right? Not NFTs. So we got the sword, we got the car, we got we got also these other utility tokens. We have Sam's IQ tokens, and now we got to sort of swap these tokens, right? So I want to trade 2 IQ tokens for 1 car token. How do we do that? What's the solution to that?
I think
Sam.
that I think that DEXs, decentralized exchanges, definitely are basically the answer. They're coming, but like we just said, they're really clunky right now. They're really slow to use, and the user experience is not there yet, right? Even less so than the actual applications. There's EOS Finex. There's a lot of good projects coming up, and what's interesting is I think wallets will be able to allow exchanges right
in the
within the wallet itself.
Yeah.
Those will be game-changing features for wallets. So I'm sure you're probably thinking about this. as well.
We've actually, if those who follow me on Facebook will know that we're going to be beta testing our own DEX next week. So if you're interested in beta testing our DEX, we actually have built a DEX, and we're going to be building that. Obviously, it doesn't handle NFTs, neither our wallet handles NFTs, so that's
The DEXs are peer-to-peer, so it's kind of
peer-to-peer.
like meeting someone from Craigslist in a parking lot without actually having to go there.
right.
Just person-to-person exchange.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
Wonderful visual.
Thank
right
you.
here.
Decentralized parking lots.
Yeah.
So let's talk about use cases. Where do you see, Amy, where do you see some of the use cases for the blockchain other than we mentioned games, we mentioned gambling, we mentioned, NFTs a little bit, and obviously we have the very special use case of the Wikipedia. What are some of the other use cases that you have thought of with smart contracts and in sort of the world as you look at it? What are some of the use cases?
So I think, the industry has largely been very crypto-centric, and I think my co-founder and I like to look at real-world use cases, right? So, how can one-day enterprise adopt this, for example? So we look at verticals like supply chain, like financial services, even the entertainment industry, right? Like today, if you go make a film, right, and how they actually pay actors later on in the film, the royalties, that can all be done actually by smart contracts. So when Sylvester Stallone comes back 30 years later and says, "Oh, I don't think I got paid correctly for this film I did 30 years ago," you don't have to go to this crazy basement with just rows of old record-keeping and counting files and hire PwC for $1 million to sit there and count every cent. You can just use a smart contract for all of that, right? But just quickly returning to the whole idea of usability, there are apps today built on EOS that you don't have to go buy EOS or a token for, and that includes yours, right? EOS links,
Yeah.
BlockUsign. We don't use tokens either, right? Yeah. And so I think user-friendly design is another thing that a lot of people have to think about because the whole mission of EOS in the first place is to make this for small businesses. And if you know anything about small businesses, it is not the Bitcoin, Ethereum, those kind of crowds where people sit in their basement and they're very tech savvy, right? This is literally for people who are very not tech savvy, right? And so I think that's what we all have to design towards. And I think that's also why EOS makes a lot of sense because not only are the transactions so much faster, but there's recourse, right? And for the Main Street person, for small business, you cannot do with a system without recourse.
And actually, I'd love to jump on that real quick if you don't mind. So that's what I'm actually the most excited, I think, about EOS in particular is that ability to have kind of good usability, right? And I think that's what's interesting. I mean, if you looked at the old some of the older blockchain games, every transaction pops up, right? And even EOS Nights, which is one of the bigger games that's on there right now, every freaking time you're having to sign those transactions, right? And I think what's really interesting is there's a lot of great concepts in EOS that we like around being able to, to stake on behalf of users, right? Why do they need to do that? Every time you go into a big video game, users not having to be like, are you sure you want this item? Are you sure you want to make this decision? Are you sure? Like, you can make those calls on behalf of them and still make, it's still a definitive answer, right? So I love things like that to where we can start staking on behalf of users and build it into our economy. It's not really the user's problem on how many things they do in a game, right? For example, or how many actions they take in your app. That shouldn't be the user's problem, I don't think. That should be the app designer's problem.
One of the main things I would like to add to that from a wallet's perspective is we notice that people, the great thing is there are no transaction fees on EOS, but you do need to stake, right? And so I can tell you that what happens with we notice is that first-time users, they don't understand the concept of staking. So they're like, oh, this is great. This is free. This is free. This is free.
And then
it's
it
free.
hits, yeah.
What? Insufficient RAM. What?
And that's a problem right now.
Insufficient resources. Stake. And the average person, if you say, hey, how much do you understand the concept of staking EOS? They're like, what? Staking? I can stake a tomato. I can stake a vampire. I have no idea what that even means to stake EOS. Right?
The terminology definitely needs a lot of work.
Terminology needs some work.
Yeah.
And really, the end user should never have to deal with this, right? So.
But that's where everything's going, right? So what's interesting is these token mechanics will be abstracted out. That's actually one of the big things we're doing with Everpedia is we're exploring how people that don't actually need to manage their tokens could just forget about them.
Yeah.
And then front-end websites and services like EOS Links or wallets and other websites can just make the user not have to even look and manage their own tokens.
This is why I think that mass adoption comes when no one even knows they're using
Absolutely.
blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. Like think about in the 90s when you had to actually fire up Mosaic, you had to actually go to these websites that were link sites, and you had to click through links to get to the web pages you wanted to get to. All that stuff is just ridiculous now, right?
So one of the other things that I was thinking about, kind of as preparing for this panel, is I was recently invited to talk at Google, and I noticed that San Francisco does not understand that EOS is not even on the map as far as they're concerned, right?
Yeah.
They just don't recognize it as a viable blockchain or whatever, and they're completely convinced that basically blockchain at this point has failed. Well, not blockchain, but crypto has failed. Blockchain might work. Give it another 3 to 5 years, but they absolutely don't understand what is happening today in EOS. I can tell you that, right? They do not, and so. Why is that? Why is San Francisco, which normally is, it seems like, on top of things, why are they so clueless right now?
All right, I'll be the NorCal hater here. Okay, so I think Silicon Valley just kind of completely slept on crypto, and they're just kind of catching up. So it's interesting because it's completely reshaped how funding works, which is ironically how Silicon Valley and the consumer internet actually worked up there, right? So obviously the original cryptos, Bitcoin, now Ethereum, all the classics, you can't kind of deny that stuff is huge. So that's why they're really big on it. And I feel like they're just a little late on the newer stuff. So give it another 6 to 12 months, and then they'll think EOS is the coolest thing on the block too after it's clear. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
yeah.
I think Blockchain Beach is really honestly where it's at for groundbreaking stuff, right? And yeah. So I mean, I've been SoCal my whole life. So obviously I'm a little biased, but I think it's obvious, right? Like you're saying, SF is not very big on the newer stuff, and that's really ironic given what its reputation actually is.
I think one of the things that I have noticed, and if San Francisco, like Facebook moved to San Francisco, but it wasn't founded in San Francisco. San Francisco missed out on Snapchat. They like completely missed out on that thing. Instagram, they didn't take seriously at all, so until Facebook really bought them. I mean, they were like, oh, that's kind of cute. They got a lot of users. So I think San Francisco doesn't really truly appreciate the consumer internet as well. They understand enterprise just great, right? But they haven't really, they don't really quite grok the consumer as well as kind of LA. I think we have this kind of, it's in our DNA, I think if you look at I've been in LA now for the last 20 years. I used to be in San Francisco. And I think that one of the things that we know, and John, you were like also, in the Pasadena kind of scene with, OpenX and stuff. It's like we kind of figured out the ad stuff. A lot of the ad stuff is LA, you know, and like, you know, whether it's ads or even lower my bills or, you know, so there's tremendous amount of that in LA.
Yeah, factual. Yeah.
AdSense.
AdSense. Yeah.
Correct.
Applied
Yeah.
semantics, yeah.
So, you know, I think that's one of the things I feel like LA is kind of pretty good at consumer, right? And so I kind of feel like all of us, you know, like we're kind of in that DNA of like, let's figure out how to make it work, and let's figure out maybe why it works second. Let's just get it to work, you know, like
Also,
Dollar Shave Club,
Yeah,
you know?
and just for blockchain specifically, to circle back, if you just look at who and what companies are based in LA versus SF, I think it just becomes really obvious that it's really the preferred location for like distributed ledger projects, just overall.
Yeah.
Forget EOS or everything, just blockchain space. I think that this is
Certainly for games. I mean, the games.
Yeah, gaming's heavy here. I mean, I'll take a little country. I mean, we were closing a very large Series A right now. We did get, you know, we have probably 40% of our round in Silicon Valley still, so we're still getting some of that. I think so. I don't want to knock the Silicon Valley. I think they are getting it. I think they're very seasonal, obviously, just like everything. So it's a little seasonal. But I do think a lot of the development is done here in LA, right? So I think some of the money's coming, and I think more of the money's going to come this way, as there's better, you know, better proven, you know, kind of growth on it. And I think we're getting very close.
So how does
to
all
having
this
some
stuff,
revolutionary
like
yeah.
some people here are investing, right?
Right.
So their interest in here is, you know, passive. They want to invest in coins. They might invest in EOS or Bitcoin or something else. How does all this stuff play into, you know, we've gone through something that I think is absolutely equivalent to the dot-com crash, okay? Having been in the dot-com crash, having survived the dot-com crash, and I equate it to like when the meteor hit the world and it wiped out the dinosaurs, and basically you had the only people who could survive were rodents, right? And, you know, like in this kind of...
Sorry,
in
we
this
call them
nuclear-
rodents?
Wait.
Okay.
We call them rodents here.
Me.
Okay.
I'm a rodent.
All right. Okay. All right.
So,
Trying to figure this
I'm a small mammal that's very adaptable and very survivable. And so I'm just saying, like, I survived just fine in 2004, and that's kind of when we kind of got really big in ad tech, you know, and you did too.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that, like, and we developed our teeth, right? But in 2003, you couldn't raise money.
Yeah.
You had to make money, okay? You had to have a business that made money. And I think one of the things that we're seeing now on EOS, these crazy ARPUs. So, John, talk to us about the ARPU.
Yeah, no, I think that is fascinating. So again, we're really looking at how do you bring blockchain into kind of mainstream games, you know? I think the thing that everybody's kind of watching, and the thing I find very fascinating is I came, you know, previous to Mythical, I did a company called Seismic, and we had a big free-to-play. So we knew free-to-play really well. And what was really fascinating is watching some of these games, like EOS Knights, right? They only have about 1,500 daily users, which is kind of sad in general. I mean, that's just like you can soft launch a game in New Zealand and get more than that right now, which is a problem. But the ARPU, the average revenue per user is freaking phenomenal. I mean, it's like $6 a day per user, which is just off the charts for mobile games.
What would
or
that be
free-to-play
normally
games.
in your old
Maybe
world?
like 20, 30 cents per user per month.
Okay,
They're doing
so you're
$6
talking
a
about
day, right?
100x?
It's more than that, right? It's what I'm assuming.
100x.
Quick here, but yeah, it's amazing. So I think that's really fascinating, and kind of watching that. Now obviously, there's definitely, to me, I think what gets really cool is that as we bring kind of this world to the general consumer, how do we bring some of these principles that are working with blockchain enthusiasts, and how do we get their spending patterns to a little bit more of the mass market? And I think that's where it gets
Sam,
really, really
you wanna add to
fascinating.
that?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. So I think you're totally right in terms of the prices in the market. It's post.com crash type of scenario, but because crypto moves so fast in terms of market prices and activity, the prices are a little bit ahead of the actual technology. We still feel like we're in the 90s in terms of adoption, usability, and the prices are post-crash essentially. And I wanted to say something interesting because I think it was Brock Pierce who said the best time to start projects, and he only starts projects in bear markets, and that's really, really an astute thing, because if you're down in the trenches during this time and you're figuring out the technology, that's the best time to get work done. That is the best time to build. That's the best time to get users. And when the market is hot again, you're already right on top.
Well, as Brock, Ben, and I I was at Brock's house last night with Ben, and we were commenting, and Brock's like, We've waited 10 years for actually this moment today. You know, that basically right now is the beginning of consumer blockchain. It's going to evolve, it'll get bigger, but we've now demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt that consumer blockchain can absolutely work. And so developers and entrepreneurs, start your engines. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.